The venue's too small. Uninvite your coworkers, real family only. My future mother-in-law's voice cut through the expensive Italian restaurant like a knife through butter, and everyone at the table froze. What she didn't know was that the venue she was talking about, the gorgeous waterfront estate she'd been bragging about booking for months, had been mine since I was 23 years old. Let me back up. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but from the moment I'd arrived at Marcello's with my fiancé David, his mother Patricia had been circling like a shark that smelled blood in the water. She wore a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her blonde hair styled in that perfect way that screamed I have a standing appointment at the salon. Her husband Gerald sat beside her, nodding along to whatever she said like a dashboard bobblehead. "Sweetheart," Patricia had started, setting down her wine glass with deliberate precision. "We need to discuss the final guest list for Saturday." David reached for my hand under the table. He knew that tone. We'd been together for 4 years, and I'd learned to recognize all of Patricia's different modes of attack. This was her "I'm about to ruin your day but make it sound reasonable" voice. "The invitations went out months ago, Mom," David said carefully. "Everything's set." "That's exactly the problem." She pulled out her phone, scrolling with one perfectly manicured finger. "I've been looking at the numbers, and you've invited 47 people from your workplace." She said workplace the way someone might say sewage treatment plant. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my expression neutral. Those 47 people were my colleagues, my friends, the people who'd celebrated with me through promotions and supported me through challenges. My team had thrown me a surprise engagement party. My assistant had helped me pick out wedding favors. My boss had given me an extra week of vacation time as a wedding gift. "They're important to me," I said evenly. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure they're lovely people, dear. But the Belmont estate has capacity limits, and we're already pushing it with Gerald's business associates and our family friends. We can't accommodate everyone." The Belmont estate. My property. The place I'd purchased with my first major bonus, the investment that had appreciated by 300% in 7 years. The venue that Patricia had called me crying about 6 months ago, begging me to help her book because it was always reserved years in advance. "How many people are we talking about cutting?" David asked. "Well, if we remove the coworkers, that frees up space for the Hendersons, Gerald's biggest clients, and the Whitmore family. Their daughter is getting married next spring, and it would be rude not to invite them." Patricia ticked off names on her fingers. "Plus, there are several of my sorority sisters who really should be included." "Mom," David's voice had an edge now. "Those are Vanessa's friends and colleagues. We can't just uninvite them." "Can't we?" Patricia's eyebrows arched. "Darling, this is a family wedding. These coworkers, they're not going to be part of your lives in 5 years. But the connections we're making with the Hendersons and the Whitmores, those are investments in your future." I took a slow sip of water, buying myself time. David's sister Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She'd always been nicer than the rest of the family, but she never stood up to Patricia either. Nobody did. "The venue's already at capacity," Patricia continued, warming to her argument. "I spoke with the event coordinator yesterday, a rather snippy young woman named Melissa, and she confirmed that we're already at the maximum for a seated dinner. So something has to give." "Melissa? My event coordinator? The one who called me this morning to tell me that Patricia had spent 30 minutes on the phone trying to add 17 more guests to the list and demanding room renovations. What did the coordinator say exactly?" I asked, my voice mild. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. She went on about fire codes and insurance limits. Typical service industry excuses. "But the point stands, we're over capacity. And frankly, Vanessa, your coworkers just don't fit the aesthetic we're going for." There it was. The real reason. "The aesthetic," I repeated. "This is a high society wedding, dear. The Belmont estate is one of the most prestigious venues in the state. The guest list should reflect that." She leaned forward, her voice taking on a confidential tone. "Several of your coworkers are, well, they're not exactly our social circle. That woman from your department, the one with all the tattoos? And your assistant mentioned she's bringing her girlfriend. We're trying to maintain a certain elegance." The table went silent. Even Gerald stopped nodding. David's face had gone red. "Mom, what the hell? I'm just being practical," Patricia interrupted. "This wedding is a reflection on our family. On our name. We're not being exclusionary, we're being selective. There's a difference." I set down my water glass very carefully. My hands were steady, which surprised me, because inside I was a tornado of rage. "So let me make sure I understand," I said quietly. "You want me to uninvite 47 people? People who've been part of my life for years, so you can invite your husband's business contacts and your sorority friends. And you want me to do this because my colleagues aren't fancy enough for the Belmont estate, exactly?" Patricia looked relieved that I was finally understanding. I knew you'd see reason. Family and important connections only. That's what weddings are really about. David was gripping his fork so hard his knuckles were white. Lauren was staring at her plate. Gerald had pulled out his phone, pretending to read emails. I smiled. It was the same smile I used in boardrooms when someone underestimated me, right before I demonstrated exactly how wrong they were. Perfect, I said simply. Patricia blinked. Perfect? Absolutely perfect. I'll take care of it first thing tomorrow morning. The relief on her face was almost comical. Oh, wonderful. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. You're going to make such a good addition to this family, Vanessa. Once you understand how we do things. David was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I squeezed his hand under the table. Trust me. I'm glad we could come to an understanding, I continued, still smiling. I'll handle all the arrangements tomorrow. You won't have to worry about a thing. Excellent. Patricia signaled the waiter for more wine. Now, let's discuss the seating chart. I'm thinking we put the Hendersons at the table closest to the wedding party. I let her talk, nodding occasionally, while my mind was already 3 steps ahead. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. David was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his eyes. I kissed his forehead and slipped out of bed, grabbing my laptop on the way to the kitchen. My phone already had 3 missed calls from Patricia. It was 6:47 a.m. I ignored them and opened my email instead, scrolling to the message I'd received at 6:15 a.m. from Melissa, my event coordinator. Subject, urgent, Patricia Morrison called again. Vanessa, your future MIL called the venue at 6 a.m., demanding to speak with the owner about resolving the capacity issue and adding her additional guests. She said she has connections and could make things very difficult for us if we don't comply. I told her the owner doesn't take calls before 9 a.m. She asked for the owner's direct number. I told her I'd pass along her message. What do you want me to do? I typed back quickly, let her call. Forward her to my cell at exactly 9 a.m. This is going to be fun. My phone rang. Patricia. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. I answered this time, putting her on speaker while I made coffee. Vanessa. Her voice was sharp with panic and anger. Have you called the venue yet? Good morning, Patricia. It's pretty early. The venue just called me. They've canceled our booking. I paused in the middle of pouring coffee beans into the grinder. I'm sorry, what? Canceled. Some nonsense about the owner revoking authorization. They said the event is no longer approved and our deposit is being refunded. She was nearly shrieking now. This is a disaster. The wedding is in 3 days. 3 days, Vanessa. Wow. That's really strange. I hit the button on the grinder, letting the noise fill the kitchen for a moment. What reason did they give? They said, Patricia's voice was shaking with rage, they said the owner felt the client was making unreasonable demands and creating a hostile environment for the staff. Can you believe that? I was simply trying to ensure our wedding was perfect. Our wedding, I corrected gently. Mine and David's. Don't be pedantic. This is a catastrophe. Do you know how exclusive the Belmont estate is? We'll never get another venue on this short notice. Everything is booked for wedding season. I took a sip of my coffee. It was perfect, strong and smooth. That does sound difficult. Difficult? It's impossible. I've already called 5 other venues this morning. Everything is booked solid through October. She was breathing hard, clearly pacing. This is all because of that snippy coordinator. She never liked me. I could tell from our first conversation. Melissa is actually really professional, I said mildly. She's one of the best in the business. Well, she's clearly vindictive. I'm going to leave reviews everywhere. I'm going to make sure everyone knows how unprofessional that venue is. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Something in my tone must have registered because Patricia went quiet for a moment. What do you mean? I mean, I said, setting down my coffee cup, that the Belmont estate has a reputation to protect. And they take defamation very seriously. I'm not defaming anyone. I'm telling the truth about how we were treated. Patricia. I kept my voice calm, almost friendly. Do you remember 6 months ago when you called me, crying, because every venue you'd contacted was booked for our wedding date? Yes? Her voice was uncertain now. And do you remember how I told you not to worry, that I'd make some calls and see what I could do? You said you knew someone. She was speaking slowly now, like she was trying to work out a puzzle. I did know someone. Very well, actually. I walked to my home office, laptop in hand. I knew the owner of the Belmont estate. Had known her for 7 years, in fact. Silence on the other end. The owner? Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. That snippy coordinator you were talking about? Melissa? She's been with me since the beginning. Incredibly loyal. Very protective of the property. I opened my laptop and pulled up the property management files, and when she called me yesterday to tell me that you spent 30 minutes berating her and demanding renovations to accommodate people you wanted to invite, people you deprioritized over my actual friends, well, I had a decision to make. You're the owner? Purchased it when I was 23 with my first major bonus. I was working in commercial real estate investment at the time. The Belmont estate was undervalued and needed work, but I saw the potential. I pulled up the booking calendar. Spent 2 years renovating it. Built it into one of the most sought-after venues in 3 states. I usually keep my ownership private, helps the business run more smoothly when people don't know I'm watching. I could hear Patricia trying to breathe. So when you told me last night that the venue was too small for my coworkers, the people who matter to me, and that we needed to maintain a certain aesthetic, I took your advice. I decided to be selective about who gets to use my property. Vanessa, wait. I selected my friends. My colleagues. The people who've supported me and David through our relationship. The people who celebrated with us when we got engaged. My voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath now. The people with tattoos and same-sex partners and backgrounds different from yours. The people you considered beneath your social circle. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I cut her off. You absolutely meant it. You've spent 4 years making little comments about my background, my career, my friends. You've smiled to my face while implying I'm not good enough for your son. And I've tolerated it because I love David and I wanted to keep the peace. Vanessa, please, we can fix this. The wedding is still happening, I continued. At the Belmont estate. This Saturday at 4 p.m., just as planned. All 47 of my coworkers will be there. My assistant and her girlfriend will be there. Everyone I care about will be there. Then what's the problem? The problem, I said softly, is that your booking was cancelled. You and Gerald and your sorority sisters and the Hendersons and the Whitmores? You're not invited anymore. The sound she made was somewhere between a gasp and a shriek. You can't do this. I'm the mother of the groom. And you told me yesterday that family and important connections are what matter. So I'm inviting family. David's sister Lauren is still invited, she's always been kind to me. David's father can come, since he's never been actively rude. But you? You made your priorities clear. Business connections over people who actually care about us. David will never agree to this. David, came my fiancé's voice from the doorway, and I turned to see him standing there in his pajama pants, arms crossed, already agreed to it. I heard everything last night, Mom. Every word. Patricia made a strangled sound. I heard you insult Vanessa's friends, David continued, walking over to stand beside me. I heard you talk about aesthetics and social circles. I heard you try to turn our wedding into a networking event for Dad's business. And you know what? I'm done. David, sweetheart. I'm done pretending your behavior is okay. I'm done making excuses. I'm done asking Vanessa to be patient while you treat her like she's not good enough. His voice was firm, final. You can come to the wedding if you sincerely apologize to Vanessa and to every single person you wanted to exclude. You can come if you acknowledge what you did was wrong and commit to doing better. This is insane. No, Mom. Insane is trying to hijack someone else's wedding. Insane is calling the venue owner at 6 a.m. to make threats. Insane is thinking you can treat people however you want without consequences. I could hear Patricia crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of fury and humiliation. Gerald, she gasped. Gerald, talk to your son. There was a pause, then Gerald's voice came through, quiet and tired. Patricia, maybe we should, don't you dare take their side. I'm not taking sides. I'm saying maybe we went too far. We? Patricia's voice went up an octave. I was trying to help them. I was trying to make sure their wedding was elegant and sophisticated and worthy of our family name. It's their wedding, not yours, Gerald said, and he sounded like a man who'd been wanting to say that for a long time. David looked at me, and I saw pride in his eyes. Pride and love and relief. Mom, he said into the phone. The choice is yours. Apologize and be part of our day, or don't apologize and miss it. But either way, the wedding is happening. With all of Vanessa's coworkers. At her venue. Under her terms. Patricia was making incoherent sounds now. You have until Friday at noon, I added. That's when we finalize the seating chart. If I don't receive a genuine apology, not a justification, not an excuse, an actual apology, then your names won't be on the guest list. I hung up before she could respond. David wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. You're terrifying when you're calm, you know that? I learned from the best boardroom negotiations. I turned in his arms to face him. Are you okay with this? Really? Are you kidding? I'm in awe. He kissed me softly. I should have stood up to her years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. You stood up when it mattered. My phone started ringing again. Patricia. then Lauren. Then Gerald. I silenced it and pulled David toward the kitchen. Come on, I said. Let's make breakfast. We have a wedding to finalize. Friday at 11:47 a.m., my email dinged. Subject, apology. I almost deleted it without reading, but David looked over my shoulder and nodded. I opened it. Vanessa. I'm writing this email because Gerald insisted, but also because Lauren sat me down last night and told me some hard truths about my behavior. She said I've been controlling and dismissive. She said I've treated you like you weren't good enough for our family when the truth is our family should feel lucky to have you. I don't know if I'm ready to admit all of that yet. But I am ready to admit that I was wrong about your friends. I was wrong to try to exclude them. And I was especially wrong to imply that anyone was beneath our social standing based on their appearance or relationships or background. I've spent my whole life worried about what people think. About maintaining images and making connections and climbing social ladders. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that the people who matter most aren't the ones with the biggest houses or the most prestigious jobs. They're the ones who show up for you. Your coworkers showed up for you. They've been excited about this wedding for months. And I tried to erase them for the sake of impressing people I barely know. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because I want to come to the wedding, though I do. But because you deserve better than how I've treated you. If you're willing to have me there, I promise I'll behave. I'll be gracious to your guests. I'll keep my opinions to myself. And maybe, if you're willing, we could start over after the wedding. Actually get to know each other. Patricia. I read it twice, then showed it to David. What do you think? He asked. I thought about the woman who'd belittled my friends, who'd tried to turn my wedding into a social ladder. Then I thought about Lauren's text from last night, Mom is devastated. Not about the venue, she learned you own it and I think she's actually impressed. But devastated that she might miss her only son's wedding. Dad said he's never seen her cry like this. I think, I said slowly, that people can change. If they want to. So she can come? She can come. I started typing a response. But she's sitting at the table with my assistant and her girlfriend. And if she makes one comment, one face, one disparaging remark, Melissa has instructions to escort her out. David laughed and kissed the top of my head. Have I mentioned you're the love of my life? Once or twice. Saturday afternoon was perfect. The Belmont estate gleamed in the June sunshine, its gardens in full bloom. My coworkers filled the chairs, along with David's friends, our college roommates, and the family members who actually mattered. Lauren stood as my bridesmaid. Gerald walked David down the aisle, tears in his eyes. And Patricia sat quietly at table 7, between my tattooed colleague Jessica and my assistant Kira and her girlfriend Amanda. I watched her throughout the reception. Watched her listen to Jessica's stories about her kids. Watched her laugh at something Amanda said. Watched her slowly, incrementally, realize that the people she judged were actually kind and funny and warm. During the dancing, she approached me at the bar. It's beautiful, she said quietly. The venue. The wedding. Everything. Thank you. I mean it. And your friends? She paused, choosing words carefully. They're lovely people. I was wrong about them. About a lot of things. I studied her face. She looked older somehow, tired but genuine. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for giving me another chance. She touched my arm gently. I know I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance to do better, I said. As long as they actually try. She nodded and walked back to her table, where Kira was showing her photos of the trip she and Amanda had taken to Iceland. David found me a moment later, pulling me onto the dance floor. Happy? Incredibly. No regrets about almost banning my mother? Not even a little bit. I grinned up at him. Though I think she learned her lesson. My terrifying, venue-owning, boundary-setting wife. Not wife yet. You've got 3 more minutes. He kissed me as the sun set over the water, our friends. And family cheering around us, in the venue I'd built, at the wedding we'd chosen, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. Some lessons are expensive. Some lessons are humiliating. But some lessons, I thought as David spun me across the dance floor, are absolutely worth the price of admission.